Thank you very much. And thanks for coming, everybody. And as stated, we're going to talk about the smart marketplace. Our take is Datassential, and I'll give you a little introduction. Datassential is a market research company. We focus on the food industry, mostly food service. So we talk a lot about restaurant trends, and you'll see some of that when we get into the slides. But our take here today is about how technology is affecting the food industry, right? What that means in terms of how people get food, where they get food, and how operators and manufacturers are trying to get more predictive in food trends and following those. So we'll just kind of dive right in. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is kind of the process for how people get food. And we're going to start off with access. And you'll see along the way of all these slides how technology is playing a role, right? So for access, we're going to start off, I'm going to kind of tag along with some of the stuff that I heard this morning from Ray. He was awesome, and he kind of validated a lot of the stuff that we kind of follow on a regular basis, which is kind of setting the context, right? So what's the occasion for people and how they eat food, and when and where and how they get it, right? So the big discussion right now in food service is the chase for getting consumers that home occasion, right? We're seeing more and more people eating at home or staying at home for food, and the restaurant and food service industry is trying to appeal to that, right? And the reasons why are pretty simple, right? So why do consumers eat at home? Number one, it's to save money. That's one of the primary drivers for a lot of behaviors. But numbers 2 and 3, it's a difficult one for the food service industry to overcome, right? You've got a comfortable home, you've got a 60-inch TV and a nice cable connection. It's easy for you to kind of stay home. So why go out, right? Especially if I can get a decent meal, which if you look at the bottom ones here, for craving something at home, or if I have variety at home, those are really low on the list, right? So the opportunity is ripe for some type of option to get a better meal to consumers. And the industry has obviously stepped up, right? And I'll just kind of nail the point home here a little bit. We ask consumers about their excitement for different types of meals and how they're prepared. So if a consumer makes a full scratch meal, right, everything's made from scratch, they're pretty excited about it, right? 50%, very, very excited about it. Mostly scratch, that number drops down considerably, right? So that's going to be, that could be a box of pasta and some jarred sauce, right? That's, somewhat scratch, not really though. Mostly prepared foods, that's probably more so, where, you're either microwaving a meal or, like I say, that box of pasta or like a frozen pizza, whatever. You can see the excitement levels considerably lower for those types of meals. Home leftovers, not too excited about either. People don't just get too very excited about eating leftovers. But interestingly enough, restaurant leftovers are more exciting, right? Much more exciting. In fact, more exciting than, and if you think about it, these 3 solutions are the majority of meals that people eat at home, right? It's the majority of the time in America, it's mostly scratch, home leftovers, mostly prepared foods. That's how people eat. Restaurant leftovers are much more exciting and considered to be better, only slightly less exciting than, making that full scratch meal. So again, the opportunity is there for restaurants to step into the space and provide food service at home, right? And we've seen this. We've seen a growth in options, right? So Applebee's has their Carside to Go, so quick takeout. That's from a casual dining player. Another casual dining player, Olive Garden, has their take one, buy one, take one. So you get your pasta entree at the restaurant, and then they give you a takeout container for the next day with the same meal. So trying to hit those occasions will get people in the store, but will also provide a meal for them at home. And of course, the technology around this area, as everybody's well familiar with, has really taken off, right? Grubhub, Yelp has, ordering. DoorDash is providing delivery options for restaurants that typically have not delivered in the past. Here's Uber Eats. Of course, the elephant in the room is definitely a key player there. Facebook has toyed with ordering options. Google will also allow you to do that. And again, I feel a little cheated. Ray kind of stole some of my thunder. Domino's is the fastest growing stock, as we saw, and there's a reason for that. We consider Domino's to be a technology company at this point. And if you've ever gone on, has anyone ordered a Domino's pizza using their app? A couple of folks, right? It's fantastic, right? It's a great experience. There's so many options, but they make it tremendously easy. And as a matter of fact, of all orders that are completed online or via some type of technology, 40% of them are through either Domino's, Pizza Hut, or Papa John's. So the pizza guys get it. They've gotten it for a good long time, and have kind of risen to the demand there. So again, technology is really driving this. I've got the Pizza Hut example here. Have you seen these? The pie tops. So you can, it's a pair of high tops that you can put on, and you press a button on the shoe, and it orders a pizza for you. Not quite my style, but I wouldn't mind being able to just press a button and get a pizza delivered. Of course, how that food is delivered is changing as well. So self-driving cars are coming into the mix. Anyone seen these? It's called the Starship. If you have kids in college, they're more likely to see this. They're big on campuses. It's a land-based drone, right? Essentially a land-based drone. You put the food in there, it locks up, it drives to whatever location, and then the consumer unlocks it with their phone and grabs their food out of it. But of course, Domino's, again, cutting-edge technology. I believe this is in New Zealand or Australia, where they've started practicing drone delivery for pizzas, which makes sense, right? I guess. I'd be a little wary that my pizza wouldn't make it to my house, but it's definitely something that we're seeing. So again, the chase is to get here, right? As we've seen, consumers are increasingly more likely to stay home. And if you look at restaurant traffic numbers, it's reflected, right? Traffic is experiencing flat to mild growth in some segments. In other segments, it's in decline, right? So casual dining, as you might have heard, is suffering big time, and this is part of the reason. So that's why we're looking for ways to get the food there, and technology, again, is playing a big role. And even when you do, have meals at home, you may source it from different places. And again, this is where the technology come into play. So let's say you're having a party with your friends. You want to serve something fancy, so you want to serve some prawns, right? I have no idea how to cook a prawn, so I might get that from a full-service restaurant, right? I might make that order and have DoorDash deliver it for me, right? I might stop off at the in-store bakery at my grocery store to get the bread, go to the deli, get some cheeses and maybe some meats for a little charcuterie plate there. And then last but not least, I might walk into the store. Actually, it's not last. I might walk into the store and get a jar of olives or some other necessary condiments. And then last but not least, I could stop off at the club store because I know I get a better deal at my alcohol there, right? So I get a couple bottles of wine, a case of beer. So we look at it as we used to in the industry. We used to say food service and retail are fighting for that dollar, but the consumer doesn't see it that way. The consumer might see it this way, right? That I just want to eat, right? And I might get even on the most mundane of occasions where I order a pizza, chances are I've got soda at home or beer at home. So you're combining those two anyway. There's just more and more ways for these two to work together in tandem. So that's the access piece. So let's talk about automation a little bit. We've seen lots of robotics on the rise, and if, the big buzz around the NRA show this year, the restaurant show, which is happening this weekend, is going to be a lot about robotics, right, in the kitchen, and we'll talk a little bit about that. This is Pepper, the friendly robot. So now we're turning over the education of our children to robots, and the caretaking therein. I love the pose here. I have a picture of one of our owners who presents, and he strikes this pose all the time, but I'm not going to share that with him. So here's a good example, right? Robots take all different forms. This is a pizza vending machine. We've seen vending machines in the past that have tried to do stuff like this. This one does it right? So they emphasize the pizza, right? They emphasize the quality of the food. You can see, real Italian pizza. You've got margarita and salami. I mean, it's a good description of it. But at the end of the day, it's an automated pizza making machine, and it is happening inside there. They're doing all the ingredients on there. Anyone familiar with Zoom Pizza? This is out of San Francisco. Another technology-based restaurant company. As you can see here, full order capability online or on an app. The majority of the work is done in their warehouse by robots, right? You'll see that ABB, boy, those guys are everywhere. There's, I've seen those robots in consumer-facing executions. But this is in their warehouse, right? So it's a robot making the pizza. There's just a handful of staff around that are keeping an eye on things and doing some of the tasks. But for the most part, the robots make it. And then it cooks actually in the truck as it's being delivered. So not only are you getting a customized, fresh-made pizza, but it's piping hot, right? I mean, it's coming off the truck as opposed to being held in that warming case, for however long, that 10-minute drive. It'll come to you hot. This is, I think it's called Baer Robotics. So this is the waitstaff of the future. If you're a Doctor Who fan, it's going to strike some terror into you. As the Daleks, but that's waiting tables, right? So it's going to bring your food out. It says bussing tables. I don't see any arms on it, so I don't know if it's going to be actually cleaning up plates, but you could certainly see it delivering food in the restaurant. Even on the prep side, we're seeing some type of robotics, right? So this is a company called Tavolo. Tyson Foods has purchased an interest in this company. It's a combi oven, right? But it's kind of like a meal kit, right? Like the Blue Aprons of the world. You get your meal kit. There's a barcode that it scans into the oven, and so the oven exactly knows what you're making and how to cook it. And it does broiling, steaming, and baking all in the same oven. So that all of the different items are cooked to perfection. This is the kind of technology that kind of spans both consumer and operator for me, right? One of the things that you'll hear about in the restaurant industry is how difficult it is to hire people now, right? They're all struggling to find talent and certainly skilled kitchen staff. Well, we're looking at solutions now that might take some of that work away, especially if it's cooking. And for those of you who are familiar with the casual dining industry, one of the reasons why some of those major casual dining chains are struggling right now is because they don't really have good food credibility, right? And it's not much of a secret that some of those big players often microwave a lot of their food. I don't hope I'm not bursting any bubbles here, but when you eat out at a casual dining chain, there's a chance that you could have done just as well with a microwave oven at home. But this is hopefully going to kind of up the game. And we've talked about, we've done some research with consumers to see how open they are to this. And not too surprising, younger consumers are a little bit more open to robots in food prep, right? In the food industry in total. And we break that down a little bit. I love this slide. 14% overall prefer robots to a human interaction. Read that as you may. It's a little bit higher for millennials. But if you take that number along with the don't care either way, that's almost half. And of course, millennials and Generation Z, that's the future, right? So this is happening, right? This is going to go this way. 47% prefer humans. But the way I look at that is if I have a counter and I'm serving 100 people and I've got 10 registers, maybe only 5 of them need people now instead of 10, right? So if you think about that kind of cuts down on some costs for you because at least half the audience is going to be happy going to the kiosk or talking to the robot as Ray showed. And we can break it down even further, right? So different aspects of the restaurant occasion. So receiving food at the table all the way down to ordering at the counter. And you could see that checking in and ordering at the counter are a little bit higher in terms of acceptance for robots, a little bit lower than for actually receiving food. Of course, all those numbers are double for Generation Z and millennials. So again, the wave is coming, right? As all the rest of us age out, these people are coming in, and as the technology gets better and more intuitive, then we'll start to see those numbers even grow from there. So it's happening. And to me, what it gives you the opportunity for, and Ray talked about this, is more data points, right? So how can you get your service better? Let's take a look at that micro data point of, well, how does the food delivery go? How did the ordering happen? How quickly did was somebody able to customize their order? All of those points will be data that we'll capture along the way that will only make the experience better. I'll just keep rolling through here because these are some of the big ones, right? So where do they want to see this stuff? Online mobile ordering, definitely. Right now, it's currently a big deal, almost 60%. And high-tech vending machines, as we talked about, right? And that's kind of a carryover, right? So you think about vending. Vending's been around for a long, long time, and not necessarily a real high-end occasion for a lot of folks. When you think about food out of a vending machine, unless you're talking about a bag of chips, it doesn't really have a high sentiment regarding quality. But now we're starting to see that change, right? And now we know that vending machines can do more, right? You see the Best Buy vending machines at the airport, and you see things like the salad vending machines, and of course we saw the pizza one. So the attitudes are changing. Again, that 57% was for total. When you look at it for just the younger generations, that number shoots up pretty high, right? So there's a high acceptance for this type of automation in the food marketplace. And just a couple of finer points here. Cashier-free stores. I think Amazon Go is coming to Chicago now out of their first test market. So we'll start to see more of that. And again, younger generations far more likely to find that appealing. New age vending machines. Lots of interest there, right? So here's your cold food prep and serve. That's your salad vending machine, right? Has anyone seen those? The farm, I can't remember what the name of it is. It's O'Hare Airport. There's one in between terminals 1 and 2. The product is kept fresh, right? It's rotated out daily, and it's a very healthy option as opposed to what else you get at the airport right now. So lots of interest in that. And even traditional vending machines, the younger generations are seeing a little bit more appeal for, right? As they know that the food options get better, they're much more accepting of those solutions. Robot ordering, definitely, fully robotic wait staff. There's a huge step up for younger generations finding that appealing. And of course, delivery. Probably the highest one on the list in terms of acceptance there. So people are looking for this stuff to happen. And I'm not quite sure what the driver is, right? So mobile kitchen driving drone, I get that, right? So Domino's had a promotional video with one of their trucks that actually had the oven in the truck, and it was a self-driving truck, so it would deliver the pizza that way. Self-driving cars we're thinking about all the time, and we talked about drones already. So there's lots of opportunities. And where do we see this playing most often, right? So again, we'll talk about occasions and we'll talk about where it makes most sense. If I'm a fine dining restaurant, probably not, right? You want to have that personal touch there. The waiter or the wait staff is definitely far better informed. We'll be able to make recommendations for you. We'll be able to describe the food, answer any questions, all that good stuff. So you're probably not going to have too many opportunities there for automation. But look how it changes, right? So you go to cafeterias and convenience stores, nobody wants to talk to a person, right? And probably for good reason. But even here in the middle, traditional fast food, grocery stores are open. People are open for automation there. I love the middle one here is bars, right? So is the wizened old bartender going away? I don't know. Certainly some of those higher end bars where you have a mixologist on staff, that might not be replaced anytime soon, but it's your average sports bar where all they're doing is cracking open bottles of beer and occasionally making a mojito or a margarita. Why not, right? And we've asked that as well, right? So what types of food and drinks could you see being automated? I thought this was interesting, French fries or chips on the list as something that they think could be automated. Not quite sure about that one, but it's on the list. Breakfast fruit-based options, smoothies, so a lot of beverages here, and there's your alcoholic beverages. So the big concern is that robots won't be able to customize, right? So something that technology companies are going to have to solve for. Because it's one of the downsides. And I'm not going to go through too much of this slide, but this is how consumers see robots affecting their life, right? Where they want to see things moving. And so you could see up here, here's the tasks, interest in these tasks, and these are the top ones, right? Cooking prep, right? So I know my knife skills are terrible, so if I could have somebody be able to cut the vegetables up for me, I might cook a little bit more. The actual cooking itself, dispensing of beverages, eating prep, so getting things ready. Cleanup is another one, right? I think that's a hidden driver. Consumers will never say, but one of the reasons why they don't cook as much at home is because they don't want to clean. So if you can automate that, you've got something. So that second round is pretty good. Really, to me, these are the big ones, right? So time saving is probably the biggest one, right? We're all chasing time, and I'm not quite sure if that's a legitimate concern or if it's just, I'm binge watching, Dexter on Netflix, and so I wanna cut back on some time so I can devote more time in front of the screen. Minimizes food waste is another one that I thought this is a lot higher than I would have considered that, right? And this could be anything from, if robots are making this, food for you, chances are they're measuring the ingredients right. There's a little bit less waste involved in the actual cook process, and they're making, just the right amounts for you, and they're making it on time. So, you could buy fresh ingredients, cook them right away, eat them right away, and you don't have to worry about storing or adding additional items. So that's the automation piece. So now we're actually going to talk about the last piece, which is the food itself, and what's happening there and how technology is driving that. So we're calling that Food 2.0. And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in food. But when you think about where food comes from, right, this is one of the things that comes to mind. Agriculture, whether it's animal or crops. This is our definition of where we get food. Of course, then it hits the kitchen, right? You go to the restaurant kitchen and you can see all the prep that goes into it, the combination of ingredients. Conjures up great images, right? And we all partake. But not as many people see this as a source of food, right? The lab. Right, there are those of us in the food industry and for food manufacturers, and a lot of stuff goes on here, but the consumer doesn't want to think about this, at least not until recently, as we started to do this kind of stuff. So has anyone seen the lab-grown meat. Yep, cellular agriculture, as they call it. So it's one of the newer waves that are hitting tables across the country. So lots of different companies getting into it, right? Impossible Foods, Memphis Meats. There's the Just company, so they did Just Mayo. Now they're getting into more animal proteins. And this is the Memphis Meats slide that they provide. They presented at our conference last year. Not terribly appealing if you're going to a restaurant. You know, not necessarily want to say, hey, look, here's how our meat is prepared. But you can see you're starting to see some terms here that you wouldn't normally consider if you're marketing food, right? So myosatellite cells or growth serum, right? These aren't things that are going to boost menu appeal, right? But it's pretty interesting stuff, right? So we're growing stuff in the lab. So I've got a video to show that, and I hope the sound is good for it. So here we go. This is from Just.
To eat real, actual meat without causing all this harm to the planet and to animals, that's what clean meat is.
The chicken was handed off to me, and for this first prototype, I said to myself, I'm gonna make the best chicken nuggets ever.
Wake up, I wanna lift you up. I wanna dress you up. Let's be friends.
It was an out-of-body experience to sit there and eat a chicken, but have the chicken that you're eating running around in front of you. You don't imagine doing something like that. But then you have this realization that we've figured out how life really works, and now we don't need to cause death in order to create food. And we're gonna have to do it if we want to continue living on this planet.
So I don't know about you guys, but the first time I saw this video, it was kind of mind-blowing, right? I mean, here they are eating chicken, and there's the chicken. And there's a whole front end of it where they actually show where they found Ian, and Ian was the most beautiful chicken they could find, proportioned appropriately, right, for breast meat and whatnot. They pluck a feather from him, and there's centrifuges and people in lab coats and equations on the wall. And they end up with the meat. Now, I'm guessing we're still a number of years away from, true commercial viability here, but it's coming, right? And it answers a lot of issues, and we'll talk about that because the question is now, when you think about food trends, and we've been talking about these for quite some time, this is the stuff that we're seeing now that consumers are most often talking about, right? They want natural, organic, they want non-GMO, and they want, made by Earth, right? That's the whole natural thing. So how are they going to respond to this, right? Humans made it in a lab. And it's an interesting question, but we are seeing that people are responding to this in a positive way, right? You think that there would be some negatives associated just because of the fact that people are looking for this natural stuff, but humans made it in a lab appeals to a different value set, right? It's not necessarily a competing value set as we've seen. And so here's some of the points, right? So people want to eat less meat, and that's just for health reasons. But why are people turning to cellular agriculture, right? Lab-grown meat. It's really about the world, right? So reduce global hunger. So they realize that this could be an option to provide a valuable source of nutrition for the globe, right? If we can do it right. Less food contamination, right? So there's no, it's clean, right? It's coming straight from the lab. And then animal welfare, as we saw, right? Ian doesn't have to die for us to enjoy his delicious breast meat. And again, all of these value sets appeal to consumers in different ways, right? So yeah, they do want natural and organic, but At the same time, they love this stuff too, right? And we have a number of vegans in the office, and I asked them, would you eat that lab-grown meat? And they said, well, yeah, I'm a vegan because I don't believe in, harming animals for my food. And that essentially doesn't do that, right? It's, if we can do it right, we can answer that solution. So that's really, kind of the height of technology in food at this point, is we're getting down to the molecular level, the cellular level, and figuring out how to grow and produce food in a different way. So eating less meat is about me. Eating clean meat is about the social good. So now let's get into the actual food trends, and this is the area that Datassential has typically been, strongest in determining kind of, what's next, right? We get our customers ask us this all the time. We have a data source that we call Menu Trends. That's our legacy service. We've been tracking, thousands of menus over time for the past 15 to 20 years. So we've got a huge database of what's appearing on menus, right, year over year. And so we can tell you what's trending, what's growing, what's declining, not just by, set menu items, but individual ingredients and flavors and all that stuff. So for the past number of years, we've seen a rise in some ethnic cuisines, right? So Latin American topping the list, right? A lot of trends there, empanadas, chimichurri, barbacoa, lots of things popping there. And of course, Asian cuisine as well, that we've seen, an explosion of not just from China, but also Indian, Vietnamese, you name it. There's a lot of stuff that's still trending. And the interesting thing is, for a lot of these items, what really turns on a trend for us is when you start to see these items appearing on non-ethnic menus, right? So when you see, an American-themed casual dining restaurant that has a banh mi on it, then you know that banh mi's are trending, right? I mean, that's really going to give you a good indicator as to how popular some of those items are. So what's the next area, right? Where are we looking next? I won't do the quiz thing because it's the Middle East, right? I'll just call up the slides here. Middle Eastern, Mediterranean cuisine, kind of blending together, but these are the next ones, right? So here's some of the countries that we're talking about, and we'll get into some of the examples, right? So these are as they appear on menus. And again, a lot of the growth here, because falafel we know has been around a long time, but traditionally has appeared only on Mediterranean type restaurant menus. But now we're seeing growth with it because it's starting to appear on other types of restaurant menus. And it's it's one of those fan favorites for the vegans in the room because it is with the chickpeas, it's a good vegan dish. Shawarma is another one. Again, been around a long time. Just slow roasted meats with a lot of flavor and seasoning. 45% growth. And again, you're seeing that appear on non-ethnic menus. When you get your plate of hummus and there's that little red, seasoning on there, that's sumac. So we're seeing a consistent growth there. This is labna. So it's a soft cream cheese made from strained yogurt. Kind of a dip that you could use for like flatbreads or hard toast. This is za'atar. I think there's actually a restaurant chain called za'atar. But it's a spice blend, right? So there's a bunch of different spice in here, oregano, thyme, and then sesame seeds and maybe some other nuts mixed into it. You can either use it as a rub on meats and seafood, or just sprinkle it on a dish, put some oil in it, use it as a dip for breads. It's a good example of one of the things that we look to for trends is multiple applications, right? So again, you can use it as a prep for coatings, but also as a dip. So the more applications you have for something, the more likely you're going to see some additional play. This is tahini, so it's a paste or sauce made from sesame seeds. Pretty solid growth there, common on the menu. This is the Aleppo pepper. So people are replacing out traditional chilies With this, it's a little bit more of a mild, spicy flavor. It's semi-dried and then chopped up and mixed into dishes. You can see a significant growth there. So again, that's all just kind of looking at our menu trends database, and we can tell you, from year over year, we've seen these items grow. But how can we get predictive on that? And this is where, we can start to speak some of the same language that the folks at Pros would speak in terms of machine language, or machine learning, sorry. Because we've developed our own system. We call it Haiku. That's our machine learning platform. And so what we did is we took all of that menu trends data that we have, all that 15 or 10 or I'm sorry, it's more like 13 years worth of data, and we put it into a database, and we use that I guess the traditional machine learning process is the 70-30, right? So you give it 70% of the data, it churns all through that, and then you test it with the other 30%, right? So we put all that menu trends data into the database, and we said, all right, let's go back to 2013. So they've got all the data through 2013 in Haiku, and we looked at hummus, right? So in 2013, hummus was on 10.9% of menus, and we asked Haiku, all right, make the prediction. Where do you think hummus is going to go over the next 4 years? And here's what the machine predicted, right? So pretty solid growth over the next 4 years. And of course, we have the actual, so we pull up the actual data, and it's really close, right? So our model is seemingly working really well at this point. So of course, we had to test it across the whole database. Here's a little bit less familiar item, lychee. You can see here a little bit more on 4% of menus, not too solid a growth, predicted and certainly realized, right? So hovering around 5% there, so just that 1 percentage point growth over the 4 years. Mac and cheese, something a little bit more popular, right? 23.8% of menus. And this is one where I would have thought back in 2013, well, it's mac and cheese. How far can it go, right? I mean, it's on the menus it's on. It's not going to be experience too much growth. The machine actually predicted a pretty solid growth trend, right? We're going up to almost 30%, and that's almost exactly what happened. And as you might know, I mean, we had it yesterday at the dinner. There was some upscale versions of mac and cheese now that people are using. Truffle mac or mac and cheese with shrimp, as we had yesterday. So lots of opportunities, and the machine picked up on that and knew it. So here's teriyaki, another one, relatively flat, and this one was almost spot on. And I think that's oh no, we have kale. Of course, kale, the darling in the industry. And this one is another one where you might think could be difficult for the industry or for the machine to pick out, is back in 2013 is on 5% of menus. It's kale, right? Who thinks kale is going to shoot up? But that's exactly what had happened, right? And the machine actually predicted it up to 18%, and the actual is really, really close. So that's enough for the examples. Our accuracy's been spot on as we've deployed Haiku across the entire menu trends database, with the point difference being less than 0.2% off. So we're pretty excited about that, because now we can actually start to answer that question, what's next? And here's some examples, right? So this is what the machine is telling us is, based on the 2017 data that we currently have live, what are the items that are going to show some pretty solid growth over the next 4 years? This is it, right? And we're pretty happy, too, because we've been talking about some of these things, but some of them are a little surprising, right? Hard root beer, maybe not too surprising, because we've seen some efforts there by the alcohol companies to get into that space. Ghost pepper, gochujang, we've had on our radar for a while now, and I believe there's a frozen dinner I've seen that is actually using that, so I call it the Korean spicy ketchup. Avocado toast, the perennial millennial favorite, used as a punchline now, but we're still seeing some growth there. Radlers and gauche, the sour beers, some growth there. Again, a lot of stuff that we've seen. Bacon jam, because of course, but there's some interesting ones on here, right? So shakshuka. Anyone familiar with shakshuka? It's another Mediterranean dish. So it's like a poached egg in a tomato-based sauce. For breakfast. You'll see it on breakfast or brunch menus. Cacio e pepe is near and dear to my heart. If you're familiar with that, I call it Italian mac and cheese, right, with pepper. The machine's predicting that, and we're starting to see that actually more and more on menus. So, Calabrian chilies, kale salads. So again, we have now the capability to take a look at that data set and really kind of explore, what's coming next. So again, to wrap things up, and I think I'm going to be on time. So we might have, if everyone else is running late, I'm more than happy to take some questions. But how technology has really affected the food industry is, across all of these different areas, and it could be, consumer facing, but then there's also a bunch on the back end, right? So from the manufacturing side, we're using a lot of science to get better at producing food and doing it cleanly. And then last but not least, we're getting predictive now, right? And the more that we do with ordering and automating that process, the more data points we'll have to get our predictive models even stronger. So that's all I have. Any questions? Nope.
How do you train your model to predict combinations of products? Because I saw that you had sriracha mayo, so let's suppose that's a product that's not available right now. So would Haiku allow you to not just look at the growth trend of sriracha and mayo, would it be able to try to combine them? Or try to combine,
I believe so. Yeah, we are just scratching the surface right now. It's not even something that we've commercialized yet, although we will be doing so in very short order. But yeah, I think the next phase of it will then be, well, all right, what are the applications that we're going to see some of these ingredients on, right? So sriracha mayo, is it going to be on a hamburger? Is it going to be on a cold sandwich? Is it going to be on a salad? Where's that going to go? So those combinations, I think, will be the next iteration. Absolutely. Anybody else? No, I think we're good. Great. Well, thanks again for your time, everybody.